The man I was supposed to marry and the woman I considered my closest friend betrayed me in the worst possible way. They thought they could steal everything and get away with it, but they never realized I had the one thing that would make them lose it all. Before we dive into this story, make sure you're subscribed and have notifications turned on so you never miss a tale of justice. And I'd love to know, where in the world are you listening from today? Let me know in the comments. Okay, let's get into it. I remember the moment everything changed with perfect clarity. Though at the time, I could never have imagined the magnitude of what was about to unfold. I had been planning my wedding for nearly a year, carefully choosing every detail, imagining that perfect day when I would marry the man I loved. I thought I had trusted the people closest to me, the people who promised to stand by my side through thick and thin. I thought I knew loyalty, but loyalty, as I learned that day, can be an illusion, a fragile mask that hides the worst kinds of betrayal. It began innocently enough, or so I told myself. My maid of honor had been my best friend since college, the one person I thought I could confide in about everything. My insecurities, my dreams, my love for my fiancé. She had laughed at my jokes, helped me pick out dresses, even stayed up late with me to plan seating charts and flower arrangements. And my fiancé, well, he had the charm that made everyone adore him. Polished, persuasive, and with a smile that could make anyone believe in happily ever afters. Together, they appeared harmless, trustworthy, the perfect support system. But then I noticed subtle shifts, tiny cracks in the facade that I had, foolishly, ignored. A whispered conversation that abruptly stopped when I entered the room. A shared laugh that seemed a little too intimate, a glance that lingered too long. I brushed it off, convincing myself that I was being paranoid. That maybe I was just stressed from wedding planning. After all, I wanted to believe in the people I loved. I wanted to believe in my perfect life. The betrayal didn't hit me all at once. It came in a flash of disbelief, sharp and devastating, that made my heart seize. 1 week before the wedding, I walked into the hotel suite where I had been expecting to find my fiancé rehearsing a speech for our rehearsal dinner. Instead, I found him entwined with the one person I trusted most, my maid of honor. They were caught in a moment that left no room for misunderstanding. My stomach dropped, and a cold, hard knot formed in my chest. The room spun, and I had to grab the doorframe to steady myself. Shock froze me, but a part of me was already calculating. I could feel the anger rising, sharp and precise, but I didn't let it show. I couldn't allow them the satisfaction of my unraveling. In that instant, the scales of my world tipped, and I realized something important. I wasn't powerless. I had something they didn't know about, something that could turn the tables. The Prenup, the secret document that my fiancé had signed months ago, laughing at it as if it were irrelevant. That document had the power to strip him of everything he thought he could take from me. I left that room quietly, with every ounce of composure I could muster. But inside, a plan was already forming. Their arrogance had given me the perfect weapon: time, patience, and the law on my side. I would let them continue thinking they had the upper hand, all while preparing the ultimate reckoning. And I promised myself one thing. When the day came, their humiliation would be complete, their greed punished, and I would finally reclaim the life they tried to steal. Before the betrayal, my life felt like a story I had carefully written for myself, stable, predictable, and filled with people I believed I could trust. I was in my early 30s, a woman who had learned the value of hard work, honesty, and quiet patience. I had a career I was proud of, a circle of friends I trusted, and, most importantly, I had found a man I thought would be my partner for life. My fiancé and I had met through mutual friends, and from the start, he seemed attentive, charming, and genuinely interested in building a future together. I considered myself practical and grounded, someone who didn't let emotions cloud my judgment. That's why I chose a prenup, not because I doubted our love, but because I understood the realities of modern life. My fiancé had agreed without protest, signing the papers with a confident smile and a casual, "Don't worry, it's just paperwork." I never imagined that smile would be the same one he wore while betraying me. And then there was my maid of honor, my supposed best friend. She had been in my life for over a decade, the sister I never had. We shared secrets, supported each other through heartbreaks and successes, and had a bond I considered unbreakable. Or so I thought. She was beautiful, ambitious, and had a way of commanding attention in a room without even trying. But she also had a self-serving streak, one I had ignored because I chose to focus on the person I thought she was, not the person she revealed herself to be. Life before the betrayal had been comfortable. We had dinners, long walks, and countless conversations about the future. The three of us, me, my fiancé, and my maid of honor, had seemed like a perfect triangle of friendship, love, and trust. I often recall the small moments, planning flowers together, laughing over tasting menus. Even the way we joked about my fiancé's obsession with color-coordinated ties. Everything felt safe, predictable, almost mundane in the best way. Yet, beneath that surface, subtle signs of trouble had begun to appear, and I had dismissed them. Little things, like my fiancé occasionally brushing off my questions about late nights or my maid of honor slipping into rooms just as he left, seemed insignificant at first. A glance here, a whisper there, I convinced myself I was imagining things, that the stress of the wedding had clouded my perception. I wanted to preserve the world I had built, the comfortable normal that made me feel secure. Now, looking back, I see the cracks that were there all along. My fiancé's charm was only skin deep, masking an entitled, opportunistic streak that I had failed to notice. My maid of honor's loyalty had limits, and those limits were tested by desire, ambition, and perhaps the thrill of secrecy. Both of them underestimated me, assuming that my calm nature meant weakness, that my patience meant submission in that normal world. I was careful, diligent, and loving. And they were people I had allowed to occupy my inner circle. I had trusted them to be steady, reliable, and, above all, honest. That trust, I realized too late, had been their greatest advantage, but it was also the foundation of the strategy I would later use to take everything back. The ordinary, peaceful life I had known was about to shatter, and from the fragments, I would forge the plan that ensured justice was not only served but delivered in a way they would never forget. The moment that changed everything didn't announce itself with fanfare. It was quiet at first, deceptively ordinary, until I walked into a scene that would forever alter my sense of trust and security. I had gone out for a brief errand, leaving the hotel suite where my fiancé and I were supposed to be reviewing final wedding details. I expected to return to the calm chaos of last-minute preparations, notes, flower samples, maybe a spilled cup of coffee. Instead, I found a scene that stopped me cold in the doorway. There they were, my fiancé and my maid of honor, entwined in a way that left no room for doubt, no ambiguity to soften the blow. For a moment, the world around me disappeared, the soft hum of the air conditioning, the gentle murmur of distant traffic, the faint scent of fresh flowers I had chosen myself, all irrelevant. All that existed was the undeniable betrayal, frozen in time before my eyes. My stomach clenched, a sharp, visceral pain that left me momentarily breathless. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to shatter the illusion of normalcy, but I couldn't. I had to hold myself together. A part of me, the rational part, immediately assessed the situation. This was no misunderstanding, no misstep, no fleeting lapse of judgment. They had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. Every whispered secret, every shared laugh I had dismissed as friendship, suddenly revealed its dark truth. The humiliation cut deep not just because of their actions, but because they had chosen to betray me, their supposed friend, in the most intimate, personal way imaginable. And yet, as the initial shock began to ebb, I felt another sensation emerge. Clarity. Among the swirling emotions, anger, disbelief, heartbreak was a cold, hard understanding. I was not powerless. I had spent months ensuring the wedding was planned meticulously, and, more importantly, I had taken a legal precaution that would become my greatest weapon. The prenup my fiancé had so casually signed. That document, a seemingly mundane formality, now held the potential to turn the tables completely. I left the suite quietly, closing the door behind me, each step measured, deliberate. I didn't need to confront them immediately. I needed to plan. Their arrogance had blinded them. They believed they had already won. They assumed I would be too shocked, too humiliated, too emotionally raw to act decisively. But in truth, it was the shock that sparked the first flames of strategy in my mind. Every betrayal they had committed became a tool in my mental blueprint for justice. In the hours that followed, I replayed the scene repeatedly in my head, analyzing every detail. Their expressions, their casual familiarity, the utter lack of remorse. I realized that their confidence was their weakness. They had underestimated me, believed my patience and composure were signs of submission. That miscalculation would be their undoing by the time the sun set that evening. I had made my decision. I would not confront them immediately, and I would not let them escape unscathed. I would wait, observe, and prepare. And when the time was right, I would ensure their betrayal was exposed in a way that was undeniable, humiliating, and perfectly aligned with the justice I sought. That single, unforgivable moment had crossed a line, but it had also illuminated the path forward. I would not just survive this betrayal, I would turn it into a reckoning they would never forget. After the initial shock of discovering their betrayal, I expected some semblance of guilt or hesitation from either my fiancé or my maid of honor. I expected an apology, maybe a moment of awkward silence, a recognition of the line they had crossed. But I was wrong. Their response, instead of shame, was arrogance, a chilling, infuriating confidence that only fueled my resolve in the days following that horrifying discovery. They behaved as if nothing had happened. My fiancé smiled, spoke casually, and went about his life, seemingly confident that I would not act. My maid of honor maintained her facade of normalcy, attending meetings and running errands as though our friendship had not been shattered. Their audacity was breathtaking. They thought I would ignore the betrayal, sweep it under the rug, and continue planning a wedding that they assumed would benefit them both. They doubled down in subtle but insidious ways. My fiancé started insisting that certain wedding costs be covered for appearances, implying that I was obligated to preserve the celebration regardless of his actions. He casually remarked that it would be awkward if people found out about any disagreements, never considering that his own behavior was the source of awkwardness. Meanwhile, my maid of honor maintained constant proximity, inserting herself into conversations, offering helpful advice, and laughing in ways that I knew were shared secretly with him. Each interaction, each dismissive comment, each laugh at my expense made the situation worse. They weren't just betraying me, they were flaunting it. Inside me, a mixture of frustration and determination grew. I realized that their confidence and arrogance were dangerous, but they were also predictable. They had revealed themselves fully, and I could anticipate their moves. Their duplicity gave me the information I needed to craft a precise, effective plan. Every lie they told, every excuse they offered, every attempt to gaslight me became another clue, another piece of leverage. I began documenting everything: messages, interactions, patterns, and inconsistencies. I needed proof, and more importantly, I needed the full story to be undeniable when the time came to confront them. At the same time, I maintained my exterior calm. I attended meetings, answered calls, and continued with the wedding preparations, all while carefully observing their behavior. I watched the way they whispered, the way they exchanged glances, the subtle shifts in their body language when they believed I wasn't paying attention. Each observation confirmed that they underestimated me entirely. Their hubris blinded them to the fact that I was quietly assembling the pieces that would ultimately lead to their downfall. The escalation was not about confrontation. It was about patience, strategy, and leverage. Their repeated attempts to assert control over the situation, acting as if they were untouchable, only strengthened my resolve. I understood then that the final reckoning needed to be calculated, public, and irreversible. The more they flaunted their betrayal, the more ammunition they provided for the justice I planned to deliver. And by the end of that week, I was no longer a passive observer of their arrogance. I had become a careful strategist, studying every detail, waiting for the perfect moment to act. The stage was set, and the actors had played their roles perfectly, unaware that they had already walked into the trap I was designing. What they didn't realize was that patience, documentation, and a cleverly executed plan would soon turn their confidence into utter humiliation. Even with all the subtle warnings, nothing could have prepared me for the moment when I realized the extent of their arrogance. Their betrayal had been audacious, but their audacity now reached a level that was almost laughable if it weren't so infuriating. It wasn't a single incident, it was a culmination of everything they had done since that first devastating discovery. Each act, each dismissive gesture, each calculated lie had pushed me closer to a decisive conclusion. I could no longer remain the quiet observer. I had to act. The breaking point came one evening while I was reviewing the final seating arrangements for the wedding. I had intentionally left a folder on the table with the guest list, fully expecting my fiancé to glance through it out of curiosity. When he picked it up, he made a casual remark that sent a chill down my spine. Honestly, after the wedding, it won't even matter. Everything will be split, and we'll all come out ahead. She'll have nothing to fight over. My maid of honor laughed, a light, airy sound that I once would have found comforting, now twisted into the sharp edge of betrayal. They weren't just planning to continue their affair in secret. They were openly plotting to take advantage of me. They assumed I had no power, that my legal protections were irrelevant, that my feelings could be manipulated or dismissed entirely. In that moment, a wave of cold clarity washed over me. I realized that they were playing a dangerous game, and the consequences for me were far more than emotional. They could have been financial, social, and deeply humiliating. Their behavior had crossed a line so definitive that there was no turning back. I could no longer delay or hope they would change on their own. The situation had escalated to the point where patience alone would not suffice. I spent the next hours in reflection, not panic. I traced the entire chain of events in my mind, recalling every suspicious glance, every whispered conversation, every dismissive response that had seemed innocent at the time. Each one confirmed the same uncomfortable truth. They believed themselves untouchable, but that assumption was their weakness, and I had a weapon they didn't even know existed. It was during this introspection that the full potential of the prenup became crystal clear. Months earlier, I had insisted that the document include strict clauses about fidelity and financial consequences in the event of betrayal. At the time, my fiancé had chuckled, probably assuming that neither of us would ever need to enforce such stipulations. Yet now, the clauses were not just words on paper, they were the leverage I needed to completely dismantle his plans and expose both him and my former best friend. I knew I had to wait for the perfect moment, but I also understood that I couldn't remain passive. The breaking point was not just an emotional threshold, it was a turning point in strategy. I had moved from victim to planner, from shock to resolve. The betrayal that had once left me numb now fueled a meticulous, deliberate approach to justice. By the time the night ended, I had fully committed to the plan. I would ensure that their greed and arrogance would be revealed in the most public, undeniable way possible. Their downfall would not be accidental, nor would it be fleeting. It would be complete, methodical, and precise. The breaking point had transformed me, igniting the determination to ensure that betrayal, when met with cunning and preparation, carries a price too high for any cheater to ignore. Once I had passed the breaking point, everything became sharply focused. My initial shock and disbelief had transformed into a strategic clarity that I hadn't known I was capable of. The betrayal was no longer just a personal wound, it was the catalyst for a plan that would ensure justice. And the key to that plan, the unique weapon that would guarantee their downfall, had been in my hands all along. The prenup. Months earlier, I had insisted on including specific clauses in the prenup regarding infidelity and financial misconduct. My fiancé had signed it casually, joking that it was just paperwork and that he would never need it. He had underestimated me completely, and in doing so, had handed me the leverage I needed. Now, in the wake of their betrayal, I saw that the document was not a mere precaution, it was a sword. A single clause spelled disaster for both him and my maid of honor if exposed correctly. The plan itself began to take shape in my mind, methodical and deliberate. First, I needed proof, undeniable evidence of their affair. The encounter I had caught at the hotel was just the beginning. I had to gather messages, hidden exchanges, anything that tied them to their betrayal without leaving room for plausible deniability. I combed through emails, texts, and social media interactions, building a dossier that would be impossible to dispute. Every flirty comment, every secretive meeting, every attempted cover-up became a piece of the puzzle. Next came timing. Patience was essential. I knew that acting too early could allow them to evade consequences, and acting too late might diminish the impact. I decided to wait until the wedding day itself. The stage was perfect, the audience captive. Friends, family, and loved ones would witness the truth, leaving no room for manipulation or spin. The psychological impact was as important as the legal one. Their arrogance had convinced them that I would remain passive, and this miscalculation became a cornerstone of my strategy. Finally, I focused on execution. The prenup was not just a legal weapon, it was a psychological one. I would reveal it in a way that maximized humiliation and ensured that the consequences were immediate and undeniable. My fiancé had assumed it was irrelevant. My maid of honor had assumed she could manipulate the situation. Both assumptions were catastrophically wrong. Every move had to be calculated, each step planned to create a crescendo of shock, disbelief, and eventual triumph. By the end of that evening, the blueprint for justice was complete in my mind. The betrayal had been audacious, but their confidence, combined with their complete underestimation of me, provided the perfect environment for retribution. I was no longer the woman reeling from heartbreak. I was a strategist, poised to orchestrate a reckoning that would leave them powerless, exposed, and humiliated. In that quiet, reflective moment, I felt a surge of calm determination. I had the weapon, the evidence, and the plan. All that remained was to execute it flawlessly. The seeds of revenge had been sown, and the moment of reckoning, inevitable and precise, would soon arrive. The day of the wedding arrived with the quiet tension of a storm about to break. On the surface, everything appeared normal. Flowers were arranged meticulously, guests were arriving, and I moved through the venue with a calm smile that hid the storm of determination beneath. Every detail I had planned over the past weeks, the timing, the evidence, the precise execution was about to converge in a single, undeniable moment of reckoning. I walked down the aisle with my usual composure, greeting friends and family with warmth, masking the calculation behind every glance. My fiancé and my maid of honor had no idea that I was about to turn their world upside down. They believed I was still the unsuspecting bride, the perfect picture of innocence and naivety. That illusion would not last for long. When the ceremony began, I delivered my vows as expected, but in my mind, I was preparing for the true performance. I waited for the pivotal moment, the one where all eyes were on us, and then, with deliberate precision, I produced the dossier I had prepared. Photographs, messages, and the crucial clauses of the prenup. I began to read aloud, each word chosen to expose the full extent of their betrayal, leaving no room for denial. The reaction was instantaneous. Gasps rippled through the audience. Faces went pale. My fiancé's confident facade faltered. His words caught somewhere between panic and disbelief. My maid of honor's composed smile cracked, revealing the shock and humiliation she had tried so hard to conceal. I spoke clearly, calmly, letting the evidence speak for itself. Every message, every secret meeting, every calculated lie they had told was laid bare for everyone to see. I emphasized the prenup clauses with deliberate clarity, pointing out that their betrayal had immediate consequences. My voice was steady, each word echoing with the weight of inevitability. Because of their actions, they would walk away with nothing. Their plans, their arrogance, their assumptions about my supposed passivity, all of it had been rendered meaningless by my foresight and careful preparation. As I read each piece of evidence, I watched their expressions crumble. Shock, denial, and rage flashed across their faces. But it was powerless rage. There was no counter-argument, no escape. I continued steadily, allowing the tension to build, letting the audience grasp the enormity of their betrayal. It was a meticulously choreographed moment, a perfect blend of psychological and legal retribution. By the time I finished, the room was silent, the weight of truth pressing down like a tangible force. My fiancé and my maid of honor were exposed completely, their previous confidence replaced with vulnerability and despair. It was the moment I had envisioned, executed flawlessly, a combination of revelation, legal leverage, and emotional reckoning. Their downfall had begun, and there was no turning back. The moment of revelation left the entire room in stunned silence. My fiancé's confident composure, the very trait I had once admired, evaporated in an instant. His eyes widened, searching mine for some hint of leniency, some signal that he could still salvage the situation. There was none. His usual charm and smooth words failed him completely. He opened his mouth, but no coherent sentence emerged, only a strained attempt to deny, to minimize, to grasp for control that was no longer his to claim. Beside him, my maid of honor fared no better. The polished exterior she had carefully cultivated, for years cracked under the weight of public scrutiny. Her laughter, once so casual and dismissive, vanished, replaced by a panicked muttering and nervous glances toward those around her. I could see the shame, the regret, and the disbelief mingling in her eyes as the evidence was laid bare. Every whisper, every intimate exchange, every secret message she thought would remain hidden had become a weapon pointed squarely at her. The audience's reaction was palpable. Friends and family, once oblivious to the betrayal, now recoiled in shock, murmuring among themselves. Their disapproval, coupled with the undeniable documentation of wrongdoing, created a wall of social accountability that neither of them could breach. The power dynamics had shifted completely. They were no longer the confident manipulators. They were exposed, humiliated, and entirely at my mercy. I continued calmly, detailing the clauses of the prenup with precision, emphasizing that their actions had activated consequences they had never imagined. No legal loophole could save them. No charm, no excuses, no last-minute pleas could alter the inevitable. The irony of their downfall was exquisite. The very document my fiancé had mocked, the one he believed trivial, was now the instrument of his ruin. My maid of honor, who had relied on her cunning and closeness to me, had also walked straight into the trap, her betrayal now fully visible to the world. I watched as their denial turned into frantic attempts to regain control, only to find themselves powerless. My fiancé's voice cracked, a mix of anger and desperation leaking through, while my maid of honor attempted feeble justifications that fell on deaf ears. I felt a quiet satisfaction, not from cruelty, but from the profound justice of the moment. Their own choices, their own arrogance, had built the scaffolding for their public humiliation. By the end of the confrontation, it was clear they had lost. Every advantage they had thought they possessed was gone. Their social standing, their credibility, their assumed control over the situation had evaporated entirely. I had orchestrated the exposure with precision, ensuring that the consequences were immediate, undeniable, and irreversible. In that moment, the betrayal that had once left me reeling was transformed into a triumph of foresight, patience, and strategy. The final moments of the wedding became the stage for the ultimate reckoning. After exposing their affair and the prenup's clauses, the room remained charged with tension. Every guest's eyes were fixed on my fiancé and my maid of honor, who were now utterly powerless under the weight of their own actions. There was no argument, no clever excuse left. They were caught completely in the consequences of their betrayal. I allowed the silence to linger for a moment, letting it sink in. Their humiliation was not just personal, it was public, undeniable, and inescapable. Friends, family, and colleagues who had once held them in esteem now saw them exactly as they were: deceitful, arrogant, and reckless. The contrast between the calm, composed stance I maintained and their panicked, desperate reactions highlighted the irony beautifully. The people who had thought themselves untouchable were now exposed in the starkest possible way. Then came the legal enforcement. I calmly reminded everyone that the prenup ensured they would walk away with nothing, not a single asset, not a penny, not even the appearance of success they had hoped to claim. My fiancé's expression went pale as he realized the full financial and social implications. My maid of honor's composure crumbled entirely, leaving her visibly shaken and regretful in front of those she had once considered her confidants. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. The moment itself was the victory, a perfect balance of justice and poetic consequence. As I stepped back, I saw the final, tangible results of their choices. My fiancé, who had thought charm and entitlement could carry him through anything, was now socially and financially diminished. My maid of honor, whose betrayal had seemed clever, now faced the isolation that comes from public disgrace. The humiliation was complete, and the lesson they had refused to heed was clear. Betrayal carries consequences, and no clever manipulation can outmatch foresight, preparation, and a commitment to justice. In that moment, I felt a profound sense of closure. The nightmare of their betrayal, the emotional upheaval, and the subtle terror of what might have been all coalesced into a precise and undeniable payoff. I had not only protected myself, but I had also ensured that the arrogance and deceit of those who wronged me would be exposed fully. The victory was absolute, satisfying, and entirely earned. Asterisk in the days and weeks that followed. The consequences of that day became increasingly apparent. My fiancé and my maid of honor, once confident and seemingly untouchable, found themselves facing the full repercussions of their betrayal. Socially, they were isolated. Friends who had once admired or trusted them now distanced themselves, whispering about the scandal in hushed tones. Colleagues, acquaintances, and even distant family members began to view them through a lens of caution and judgment. Their reputations, carefully built over the years, had crumbled almost overnight. Legally and financially, the prenup delivered precisely as intended. My ex-fiancé, who had believed he could walk away with a share of assets or even manipulate settlements in his favor, was left with nothing. The clauses I had insisted upon, once dismissed as irrelevant, now functioned exactly as I had envisioned. Every attempt he made to contest the prenup was met with cold, unwavering legal fact. His betrayal had voided any claim. My maid of honor, likewise, faced the stark reality of losing the friendship, trust, and credibility she had relied upon for years. Both were humbled, and justifiably so. For me, life slowly returned to a new normal. Though it was richer and more empowered than before, I took time for reflection, realizing the strength and clarity I had discovered within myself. The pain of betrayal, though initially overwhelming, had catalyzed growth and self-assurance. I immersed myself in work, nurtured authentic friendships, and focused on creating a life untainted by manipulation or deceit. I had learned that foresight, patience, and intelligence could turn even the deepest wound into a source of empowerment. Eventually, I moved forward in life with renewed perspective. I understood that true security doesn't come from trusting blindly, nor from ignoring warning signs. It comes from preparation, self-respect, and the courage to enforce boundaries. My ex-fiancé and former best friend faded into the background of my life, their reckoning complete and their presence no longer relevant. In contrast, I carried forward with dignity, knowing that justice had been served in the most satisfying and thorough way possible. The moral of the story was clear. Betrayal may wound, but it also reveals the power of strategy, foresight, and unwavering self-respect. Those who deceive and manipulate often underestimate the quiet, patient strength of those they intend to harm. And when justice is executed with precision, it is not only vindicating, it is transformative. I emerged from that chapter of my life not just intact, but stronger, wiser, and fully in control of my future.